Hello, everyone. Happy Friday. It's Friday for me. I don't know what day it is for you. Hey, everyone. It's me. It's Ryan. It's Alpha Rookie. We are doing another quick little video because I am busy. It's all my fault. And I said to Kyle, I'm like, is there something that we can do really fast, really quick that I can just talk about? And he said, what about the Hellboy trailer? And I'm like, of course. They're making another Hellboy movie. Somehow, some way, they're making another Hellboy film. And we do have a trailer already, so I told him I'll just do a really basic trailer reaction, I suppose. Just what does Ryan think about it? I know some of you guys care, so let's talk about it.
It smells like death.
I don't really know, I didn't do any research, now that I think about it, in terms of the pedigree of this movie, but I think that the folks that are directing this, writing it, whatever, are behind Crank, which I never watched. But I believe that's also the same people that worked on the Jonah Hex movie, which I never watched because I heard it was so awful. And that's another character, comic book character, that I adore and didn't really want to see how bad of a job they did with it.
Don't do this, Journals, please.
Let's just talk about the trailer. So, Hellboy movies. This is the fourth Hellboy movie. We're getting there now. Now I'm sort of like, with the kind of things that I enjoy, especially with me and Kyle, I'm kind of hoping now we're just actually going to get like 10 Hellboy movies that eventually go direct to video, and just seeing how bad and how down the rabbit hole we go, so to speak, just the same way Hellraiser did or any of these other franchises. That being said, it still looks like a real movie. Let's start with the actor. He looks fine. The makeup is not as good. I think that's much as obvious. I don't think that it's unacceptable, but it's definitely not on the same level as the previous two movies. This is a horror film. Like, they're really specifically going, what if we try... Like, if you pulled Hellboy out of this trailer, any shot of him or mention of him, it would just look like another kind of Conjuring or, Blumhouse. Actually, it kind of reminds me of the Evil Dead remake. In terms of its tone, there's even like the lady and the snake is kind of doing some stuff, and that seems like that's right out of the Evil Dead remake. So it's really going for that vibe. Maybe if we market towards the people that like those kinds of movies, they'll, And then some people might say like, oh, it's horror. That's what you want from Hellboy, right? And I go, this is so complicated. Yes, Hellboy graphic novels are in the horror section where they should be. However, it's not really horror in the same way that like Conjuring is horror. It's kind of more like gothic. I've talked about this before. I've mentioned the kinds of movies that I feel like actually have the correct tone and feel of what a Hellboy movie should be. This is not what I would say is what I'm looking for a Hellboy movie based on just the tone. That being said, let's try it. It's something different. They also very intentionally and probably smartly are going to be doing a story called The Crooked Man. Now, The Crooked Man is a actual Hellboy story. What is nice about this, and we'll kind of see if it pans out for them, is that The Crooked Man's very self-contained. It's not like a part of his main mythology or anything like that. This is a story from him in his earlier years as a paranormal detective. And so right then and there, you can kind of get away from... I'm sure they're going to touch on this stuff, but you can get away from the beast of the apocalypse and having shots of hell and this and giant Lovecraftian monsters and all that kind of a thing. Because The Crooked Man is more low-key. And it's also takes place in America, which is a little bit unique also. When Hellboy stories take place in America, they're usually in like Baltimore or Washington, just somewhere that's old, that might have some old stuff, or like a manor that's been around forever and ever. But this one just takes place in the woods, which is cheap if you're making a low-budget horror film and you're trying to make a Hellboy low-budget horror film. This is a story that takes place in Appalachia, and it's kind of has to do with witches and this sort of folklore surrounding the Crooked Man. The Crooked Man was not drawn by Mike Mignola. It was drawn by Richard Corbin, who in my estimation is one of the greatest horror artists who ever lived. It's a really fantastic, cool story, but there's not a lot. It's going to be very different from everything people have seen in the movies before, because all the movies before were trying to go big. Del Toro brought this aspect of, the movies are going to be Men in Black, so it's going to be like, here's the paranormal, the Bureau of Paranormal Research and Defense and all its facilities and giant elevators and things like that. But then we're also going to do giant monsters, and we're going to try to hit that stuff. And even the last movie that came out that was terrible was trying to go for more of like a, I don't even know at this point. It sounds like that movie had so many cooks in the kitchen, but still very much like a superhero kind of comic booky sort of action thing. Not at all what we're looking for. But this one, we will see. It's kind of interesting that they're trying to do a story like this that's like more grounded. And but I don't know. We'll see. I got my honest take is that it doesn't look good. That's my honest, actual, genuine reaction. Will I go see it? Absolutely. Of course I'm going to go see it. I have to go check it out. But that's what I was going to say. I was going to say that one of the things that if you go back and you watch our videos about my kind of gripes and complaints about the Hellboy adaptations thus far is that one of the big ones is that God, they're always making it shouldn't actually be that expensive to film a Hellboy movie and actually give it the same visual style that a Mike Mignola Hellboy comic has, because Mike Mignola puts all of his artwork in darkness. It's all just smothered in darkness. He doesn't want to draw lots of backgrounds and stuff. So you could do a lot with contrast with light and stuff like that. Most of the time when I think of Hellboy in a movie, I would just think like it's him skulking around old castles with like a candelabra, which is, I mean, you're like, oh, shooting in a castle, that must be expensive. Yeah, but you know what's not expensive? Making most of your set completely dark where nobody can see it. So you can hide a lot there in that darkness. So in a sense, I was like, why aren't they just doing kind of a story like that that's more self-contained, and you could just kind of make it more of a horror thing and keep it all in the dark, which is the self-contained part. That's what they're doing, but the look of it doesn't look like that at all, right? It looks more, it looks like a chillennial. I don't know where I got that word from. I heard it somewhere. It's stuff like The Conjuring, stuff like Insidious. That's what I was trying to think of, or like Insidious. And
all the
James Wan just stuff feels very James Wan.
A1L.
Yes, and that could be really cool. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, first impressions doesn't look great. Even if it was just a horror film and it had nothing to do with Hellboy, it just looks kind of derivative and generic for those kinds of horror movies that are coming out all the time. Blumhouse or like James Wan Conjuring films. I'm gonna get raked for that. Like those movies are good, but I don't have the same awe of them as other people do. I think they're pop and boo scary movies are not my favorite, and that's what this looks like. Again, it could be fine. It could totally be fine. We'll have to see. I'm curious if it's gonna like just tie itself into any of the continuity that the other films have established, or if it's going to just try to do its own thing. One really quick, like a signifier of when these films happen, like first of all, the one thing is like, is he going to be an adult or is he a kid? Because in the Del Toro films and the most recent one, I know why they do it, but I hate it. They decide to make Hellboy an adolescent. He's somebody who's like a shut-in and he's never experienced the world, so they treat him like he's 16, or he acts like he's 16. He's got daddy issues. Always drive me crazy. In the comic books, he's born in World War II in like 1945, and the action of his main storyline starts in like 1995. So he's a 50-year-old man, like 40, 50. Yeah, 50-year-old man. Like 50-year-old men don't talk like that or act like that. They act like adults. And also Mike Mignola based a lot of that character on his father, who was like a no-nonsense bricklayer with hands of granite, you know. So I'm curious with this movie if he is just an adult. Another thing too is when other people run into Hellboy, do they know who he is and how they react to him? Again, in the comics, they don't make he's not a secret. Everybody knows about him. The whole world knows about Hellboy. One of my favorite lines in the entire comic franchise is early on, and he goes to visit this old lady in her house, and she calls him Mr. Boy. Oh, Mr. Boy, would you like some tea? Like, he's not a secret. He's just a part of the world. And I'm curious to see if they do anything with that. All the dialogue, there's not very much of it in the trailer, but there wasn't anything that anybody said that didn't sound like it did come straight out of the book. So that's a good thing, but then again, there wasn't a whole lot there to begin with. What I'm looking for is going to be, how does this guy actually play Hellboy? Does he feel comfortable in the role? How well do they hide what little budget they have? And I'm very curious how actually self-contained they're going to keep this. I have a notion that, wow, they really might just... This is just this one little adventure that he has out in the Appalachian woods, dealing with the crooked man and witches and things of that nature. And maybe that's the way to go with this. Maybe each movie should just be kind of a monster of the week and not bother with the actual general mythology. I don't know, but I'm not going to get tricked anymore. I try to keep my hopes high for that last film. And there were even things about it that it didn't crush me or anything, but there were things about it that I found to enjoy. But overall, it's like, yeah, it was bad. Everything that I was kind of hoping it would be, it was not. And this one, I'm keeping my expectations extremely low. That's it. That's about all I have to say about it. When does it even come out? I have no idea. Maybe before the end of the year. And we'll see how it goes. I hope it's decent. I hope it's decent. But if it's not decent and it's bad, I hope we just keep getting worse. I want Kyle and I to do a Hellboy marathon podcast years from now, where we look at the 8 films that have come out, and by the time you get to the 8th one, isn't that nuts? Like, Hellboy's now gone through 3 different actors in 4 films. I didn't even think we'd ever get 1 movie, let alone we've gotten 4, and where it's gone since then. Okay, that's it. I got nothing else to say. Have a good weekend, everybody. I guess go see it, but I don't care. Mainly like read the books, read the comics. That's one thing, I'll end with this. So I love this quote, this little story anecdote. Alan Moore, I guess, was being interviewed. If you don't know who Alan Moore is, he wrote Watchmen and V for Vendetta and From Hell and a bunch of other things. And he was being interviewed, and they were asking him, don't you get really upset that these movies come out and they're so different from the comics and all the liberties that they take? And then Alan, I believe this is how it goes, this is all from memory, Alan Moore recounts to the interviewer another anecdote where he says, well, I remember Raymond Chandler. If you don't know who Raymond Chandler is, he was one of the great American pulp crime novelists, along with like Dashiell Hammett. So Alan Moore is telling this interviewer, well, somebody asked Raymond Chandler the same kind of thing way back when Hollywood makes a movie out of one of your books, do you feel like they ruined the book? And Raymond Chandler took the interviewer into his personal library, and he said, the movies didn't destroy my books. They're all right here. As a point of just saying, they can do whatever they want with them. It doesn't change the fact that they're right here. But this is what I'll say. It does hurt. It hurts the sales of the book, and it hurts people trying to check those things out. So the more and more bad Hellboy movies they make, the less people are likely to pick up the comic book because they have an idea of what they think it is already. That bothers me. I've seen it happen already with Sweet Tooth. The show on Netflix is actually really good, but it's definitely been more young adulted and made more palatable for like a general audience. It's kind of a fairy tale vibe to it. I like it, but I can see why a lot of people wouldn't want to watch it. The comic book that is based on is one of the darkest post-apocalyptic comics I've ever read in my life. And based on what people like Walking Dead, or just like dark things in general, I say, check out this book, you'll like it. And then they don't want to because they have an idea of what they think it already is because of the Netflix show. And then that ends up hurting the book. So I do care, but I don't. I do and I don't.
How much is Hellboy even in the trailer?
Not very much. It's hardly at all. Again, it almost feels like I think the Hellraiser comparison is apt because like we had all these movies that were not Hellraiser movies, then they just decided, put Pinhead in it, we're going to make it a Hellraiser movie so we can keep the rights. I'm not saying this is that bad, but he's barely in the trailer. Again, with a few minor things that you could pull him out of it, you could still just call the whole thing, take the Hellboy out, just call it The Crooked Man, and it would just look like another, it's a horror movie in Appalachia. That's not even unique. There's been plenty of like rural horror films that deal with that kind of stuff. But it actually, again, I keep saying The Conjuring, but I more Evil Dead than anything. It feels more like Hellboy Evil Dead, which on paper I'd be like, yeah, why wouldn't, those are two things that I love. Why wouldn't I want them together? It's just not really the tone I look for really in the books, but I keep an open mind.
So with that said,
Hellboy. They're still making them. Here comes another one, and I'll see you again when it comes out for another Here's What They Did.